All right. Well, in an effort to always be punctual and keep these NMR Connect sessions running on time and within the time allotted, we're going to get started. It is 1 p.m. and I want to thank everybody who has joined us. If you're watching this live or if you're watching it on demand, thank you so much for joining us in either format. Today with me is one of our lead design engineers, Jason Skoloda. Jason, welcome to the NMR Connect.
Hey Kyle, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. So Jason and I have been having a running conversation over the past, I say, few weeks, maybe even a couple of months, about as we're getting back into in-person trade shows and the excitement and the rush and the demand. We started talking about putting this session together. And Jason, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself first. How long you've been with NMR, what you do on a day-to-day basis, and maybe some of the projects you're going to showcase today.
Sure, yeah. I've been fortunate enough to be with NMR for about 12 years now. Currently, I moved to New Jersey about 4 years ago, and I've been working on the engineering team ever since. We do a lot of, my main job is the budget and engineering of jobs, so a lot of LED, a lot of staging events, a lot of large trade show installations. Anything complicated gets usually thrown my way. And that's pretty much what I do on a day-to-day basis, is deal with anything that's a headache for anybody else.
So when the drawings come in from our partners and they look incredibly complicated, and we're not just putting up a billboard in the middle of a trade show floor, that's when you and your colleagues jump in on this and start to figure out feasibility, I'd imagine, and then obviously the cost factor to some of the more elaborate designs we've seen.
Absolutely. We work with, all of our customers to make sure that what they're doing along the whole entire process is correct, to make sure they're not misstepping so we don't have problems on site. A lot of what I do is a lot of measurements, just giving them advice on how to design things, based on how they produce things, also to help them have an understanding of the best way to do things so everybody's happy.
That's awesome. Jason, from my technical background as an engineer and talking to another engineer, I always get excited because, I think that we have a very unique perspective on what works and what doesn't, right? I like to always say that to our partners, hey, don't do it because it's cool, do it because it works, right? And often we see a lot of our partners coming to us because the ultimate goal at a trade show is to bring people in off the aisle, right? And I always love to ask this question to our team members because I want to hear your perspective. What are some of the things that you've seen on the trade show floor that you really feel work best? What are some of those things that you've always seen like, wow, this, interactive with this technology really drew people in? What are some of your favorites?
Well, honestly, because it's what I do, LED is one of the biggest drawers. If you have a trade show booth with a giant banner, it just lets the whole entire floor know that you're there and you mean business. You spent the time and the effort to put up this giant billboard that draws people in. And once they're in, one of my favorite things to see is individual experiences in the booth. And we do both of those things. So small interactive experiences once they get there. Sometimes we make games, things like that, something that actually gets the person involved in what the product is and what they're trying to sell.
And that's awesome. I mean, I'm always myself personally, I've always been a big component of, beautiful art, right? I love what we put on the screens, how we light the booth, is a huge part of that experience too. As you're walking by, a well-lit booth obviously creates depth and it creates interest, right? But for me, when there are incredibly powerful messages supported by incredibly beautiful content on the technology, on the monitors, on the LED walls, that's when things really start to draw people in. There's all different other factors that we won't get into there as we're focusing on technology. But, the design of LED and how it's practically used has really evolved over the last 10 years, right? I mean, I remember early on, it was just about, again, that big billboard, right? That, the one you saw across the trade show floor, you knew exactly where this particular booth was because they had this huge billboard up. But the first project that we're going to dive into really has a much more unique take on using LED technology, where it became more of an organic feel. And I started talking about this one pre-pandemic, when we were traveling around the country and educating our partners in person. We talked about using LED from an architectural standpoint. But this first project, I personally feel, takes it a whole step further. And I'd love to share my screen now, and let you talk us through this project and what the process was like, the technology that was used. But take us through the steps of what your day was like building this thing, or your process was like in vetting, executing, finding the right product for the installation, and making it all come together. So I'm going to put this up. We've shared this on social media, and this Sentinel-1 booth was a big hit.
This Sentinel-1 booth was a huge deal. I really loved working on this booth. It was one of the more challenging projects we've ever done. One thing I want to point out is, we have an excellent engineering team and an excellent drawing CAD team. If you look at this picture, one thing that's really clear is those arches in that building. That's the Moscone Center. Unfortunately, the space where the booth is, you are pretty much unable to rig. We went through so many submissions trying to figure out how to rig that, that flown banner with the curved corners in that booth. And what ended up happening is we were able to, if you can tell, what's really interesting is those tiles aren't hanging. Those tiles are actually affixed to the sides so that the truss is sitting within those tiles, which is also very rare to see because we had to get up as high as we could. And since we couldn't rig, you can see those black legs. We went ahead and went with a self-rising truss solution for this particular job.
So if I could pause you there, Jason, you said something really important that I think is really good for our audience. If you do understand it or don't, Jason said a self-rising truss. So that means that they were able to do all the work on the ground, okay, at a low level. The truss was almost at working height, right? So they built the substructure and then attached, excuse me, all the LED to that self-rising truss. And then without anything above, so there was no rigging points above it, that truss stands up on the pillars you see. Right, Jay? That's a good, accurate description of that?
Yeah, it's actually really, really neat to look at. It's kind of like a car lift. So those four legs on the outside act as posts, and the truss, literally, you build everything, and then it lifts itself up into the air. And
I actually think I have a picture of you guys mid-work on this. Let me see if I could find that really quick. Let me advance the
well, we've done
slides
this
here.
booth multiple times, and
Oh, okay, so this is the rigged version. Okay, never mind.
Yeah,
I apologize. Right.
I was very happy when we did it the next time we were able to rig it.
Yeah, well, and
But
it creates all that clear.
if you go back to the previous picture, I do want to call out some very neat things. So
yeah,
obviously there's a bunch of different products. Or if you go back to the banner, let's just call out a couple cool things about the banner other than how it was built. So with this banner, we were also able to integrate Sentinel-1's light boxes onto the LED tiles. So if you see that raised logo, that is actually hanging off the front of the LED tiles. And then the content actually looks like it was exploding out of the logo, which is really cool. We also were able to use 90-degree curved tiles around the edge to give it a soft, smooth edge instead of having a hard cut edge. So as you walked around the booth, it wasn't, a jagged transition. It kind of smoothed around the edges and it looked really pretty. And then if you go to the next picture, another big thing. So there's a ton of different floor tiles on the market. And whenever I'm looking at a job, we always pick the best product for the job. This whole booth was shiny. Everything was beautiful. So we decided to go with black marble floor with a glass top. So everything, all of the lights reflected off of it and everything played off each other to make just a beautiful experience when you were in there. The top is also covered in like a canvas so that it's a nice dark area as well. So the reflections were all over the place. The LED strips that we programmed up and down that tree base, those all reflected. And as you can see, it turned out really good.
Yeah, Jay. And so you said a few things to me that were really interesting. The first thing, obviously, or the last thing that you said was about, the synchronized LED strips that created those, lifelines of that tree, for the lack of a better term, right? And that was that a synchronous programming with the content that was on the floor?
That was a semi-synchronous programming.
Okay.
if you know anything about LED, there was about 12 universes of DMX running that tree. And it was, what we did was we actually created custom videos to replicate what was going on the floor on site. And we
Awesome.
continue doing that for them in the future because they really like the look.
Yep. Very cool. And now the other thing that you mentioned is when you selected the finish of the LED tile, and we do know that there's a lot of LED floor tile out there. Some of the other options that I know of, and correct me if I'm wrong. So you had the high gloss glass top there, but you can also do, I think, a matte finish, correct?
Yes, you are correct. And you'll actually see that in the next booth. There's pluses and minuses to all these products. Everybody loved the gloss finish, but with a high traffic trade show area, sometimes it becomes an issue with having to clean it every few hours
Yeah.
after everybody steps on it. So it looked beautiful, and you'll see when we did the next integration of the booth, we actually went with the matte. I prefer the gloss. Some people preferred the matte. The people who
Right.
had to clean it preferred the matte.
So this was the matte finish right there,
This
right?
is the next time we did this booth. The interesting thing is we were able to go to a larger size. So as you can see, the tree sits in a little bit this time, but we actually had more ceiling height, so the tree is actually taller. So,
Oh, okay. Very cool.
every single one of these jobs is based on what we're capable of doing in the space we're provided.
Yeah, absolutely. And adapting to that space. That's awesome. Um, so I guess at the end of the day, what I love about this project is that mixed media feel, right? So having, multiple surfaces, right? A cohesive art design to it, right? So like, this is exactly what I meant by beautiful art. If you had this tree built there and you put up an LED and you had the floor, but the content that's on it isn't rock solid, right? I mean, that's the part where you kind of start to lose the value of the technology. How often do we see ourselves put these beautiful installations in, and then the art doesn't support the amount of effort to the technology, right? I mean, that's so when you're planning to do something using new technology or a higher end integrated technology, make sure that you begin your content plan way before any of the other parts, right? Like that, because it takes time, right? The development of that content takes time. The approval process takes time, right? And just the understanding of how it's going to look and feel. Jay, one of the more common practices that we follow and we recommend to our partners is always about doing pre-visualization, right? So get a design together, put the physical products into that previs, and then doing the pre-visualization allows the designers of the content to see what the content will look like, how it will react. All this should happen in pre-production. It shouldn't be something that two separate entities are working apart from each other and then they come together for the first time on the trade show floor, right? You want that to be a collaboration from the beginning. Or if you have a partner that can do it all within one roof, right? That's always helpful as well. Anything else that you wanted to highlight on this, Jay, before we move
I just
on?
wanted to add to your previs thing. If anybody's thinking about doing any perspective-based content, it is 100% necessary to do previs and visualize what you're going to do. You can use Unreal, Maya, whatever you choose to build it in. It is an extremely important thing. I don't know if you've seen the images of like the fishbowl in China, kind of the billboard sign where it's a giant fish tank, and it depends on where you stand. We're actually working on a project like that right now, and I told previs is 100% important if you're trying to do something based on where someone's standing.
Yeah. And not, it takes a lot of the anxiety out of the project too, right? So, everybody wants to do a good job. Everybody wants to have great results. And your designers feel comfortable, right? Your installers and your integrators feel comfortable, right? We've all understood from a visual standpoint how this is going to come together. And it just really, it's like trying to build a booth without a drawing, right? I mean, when you get into that level of intricacy with content, you want to make sure it's going to live on. All right, so I think we have another project to dive into here. This has got, again, oh, there's another view of that. I didn't realize we had one more photo of that. There we go. And okay, cool. So we had some live action video of this as well that Jason shot after this installation or during the installation process, so you can see what that looked like in motion. So for this next one, this was I think at the gaming show, correct, Jay?
This is Global Gamers, so it was all of the professional companies that make all the casino gaming machines. So
this project had a ton of custom fabrication that was required to make all different kinds of angles, right? So So let me just, before you dive in, Jay, one of the biggest challenges with LED has always been, that 90-degree edge, or that, that seam, right? When you're bringing walls together and in on an angle. And our engineering team has worked tirelessly on creating really great solutions on making that happen on the trade show floor in a very simple, well, I don't want to say simple, but in a very efficient way is, I think, a good way of putting it. Jay, take it away. Why don't you tell us what we got going on?
Well, this LED entrance that we did was actually quite a head scratcher. So they don't make any products that actually do this kind of angle. Obviously it's fantastic that designers love to design things, and we got our hands on it and we had to figure it out. So, we're in the shop doing CAD after CAD. We had cardboard cutouts trying to figure out how to do this angle. But we ended up coming up with a solution that looked pretty good. Looking at it, you would have no idea how complicated it was to put that together and make it happen.
I think we have a picture of that, don't we, Jay? Of some
of the overhead rig. I think we have a picture of the overhead rig. So
okay,
that was a rig that I designed that gave us a lot of flexibility as far as that on the left. If you're looking at it on the left-hand side, it gave us a lot of flexibility as far as the exact angle. If you look to the right, we actually built a wall that went vertical and extended past where those LED tiles went. And then we got it up in the air, positioned it, and adjusted the angle just perfectly, because if it was off angle a little bit, the seam would have been extremely wide and visible. So,
and is that what that hinge is right there?
So that's actually, if we'll get to the hinge is actually on the other wall in the booth. This booth had a lot of custom fabrication.
Okay.
The hinge is actually it was a 54 wide by 8 tall gigantic wall in the back of the booth that had a odd angle that was non-standard. So we made a hinge so that the seam would also be invisible. But as far as that hanging piece goes, it's also interesting. It's hard to see in this picture, but if you look on the right-hand side, those are actually 45-degree angled triangle tiles. So we were able to use that to our advantage. You can't really see it in the picture. Yeah, those are
here.
They're cut at a 45 degrees. So those tiles are not whole tiles. They're triangles pretty much that we put together and angled to match up to the other side.
So Jay, I went and highlighted this turnbuckle you have here, and I'm guessing those turnbuckles what gave you that flexibility to adjust the angle.
Yeah, and we actually did a system of double cheese on the front so that it was actually hinged, so we could change the angle as much as we wanted to.
Right. Okay. So you had the front side adjustable as well as the middle of the back side.
Yeah, adjustment's always
Very
good on
cool.
set.
Yep. Let me get rid of those. All right. So let me keep moving along here. I know there was a lot in this booth. So this was inside that main entrance, right?
Yeah. So you can see the main entrance through this doorway. It was actually this booth had its own sports book, which was pretty fun.
That's awesome.
And this was another fun project because we got to work with some of our partners on. What we did was we actually provided a custom-made ticker with the client's logos, with all their partner logos inside of it, with all the specific sports teams they wanted to show up on the ticker. And then you can also see that we had the sporting events were also all pre-recorded. And if you go to the next picture, you'll probably see the giant odds wall. We had live betting odds. I know there's another picture of it somewhere. But on that screen on the right, you can see we had live betting odds going on the screen, along with pre-recorded sports playing. And we also did a custom leaderboard program for the basketball machine on the left. So even this little room had a lot of customization. There's even a Padzilla in there showing off their iPhone app, so people could use the betting app.
That's right there in the middle.
Yep.
Okay.
This booth had custom everything. Yeah.
And so now, and just so I understand the process for this, right, with coordinating, the live stream of data coming in and all of that was all done in pre-production. And then when you got on site, this was kind of like just put it together again now, right?
Exactly. That odds machine actually came from England. It wasn't even in the US. We got it, but it was configured on site, and we actually used an E2, which is a very powerful switcher to chop up everything and display it correctly on the wall. We had multiple layouts. If they wanted to display things different ways, they could. So it was good.
Yeah, so often, and I love that you brought, the E2 into it because yeah, I was a video systems engineer, but more importantly, what using the right piece of equipment for the right job is so important. So often we get into a situation where we're in a budget, crunch, right? And we want to make something happen that doesn't really fit into the budget, right? But when you are able to make things work within budget and use appliances like a Barco E2, and you're able to image process at the with the right hardware, with the right types of flexibility in how you can size things and shape them and scale them within a single canvas, meaning that one LED wall. That's what creates those experiences to feel so authentic. And I think that's an important part of what your engineering team, along with Adam Burghardt and everybody else involved over on that team does. Being able to really fit the right hardware budget, and that's why I think it's when you think about an engineering process that also is tied to budget and they're not separate from each other. This is where its power comes in, because a guy like Jason has to go and take into consideration, okay, well, we need to make this all happen. Here's how we would do it in the dream, right? Like unlimited budget, this is
Yeah.
what we want to do, right? And then, working with the client and understanding what the real budget is. Sometimes you have to value engineer some aspects of it, but you can, when you have somebody who's a stakeholder in the success of your trade show booth, then you have a partner that is really going to understand, look, I can't risk this portion of it because there's no other appliance that'll do it. But where we were spending money over on this side of the budget, maybe we can do it a different way that it's not as high risk. I always find that to be an incredibly powerful process. But I'm gonna keep you moving along through this booth to this was, I think, a column wrap here.
Yeah, that's a three-sided column, and it shows off the traditional 90-degree corners that we can do. We did a custom structure inside to support it, and it turned out pretty good. It was nice.
Awesome. And so now the next picture, I believe, actually there's a video coming up. This is like kind of to show you the depth of the whole project. I'll go ahead and play this video. There was a lot going on here. I mean, we looked at different sections of it, but go ahead and tell me. I know that for LED guys, getting seams rock solid is a big deal, right? Like when you can do when somebody can't even
Yeah.
tell there's a connection point, that's like high five moments. So Jay, I don't mean to steal your thunder. I'm actually gonna rewind that video back so you can talk through that main shot here.
So if you can see in the background, it's kind of covered up by the entrance. There's a gigantic wall, and you can barely see where the turn is made because I forget if it was 30 degrees or what the exact angle was, but because we made a custom hinge, we were able to do that angle without a giant seam. The other big thing I want to talk about with that big wall was originally it was supposed to be 10 tiles tall.
Okay.
The weight of that wall was around 15,000 pounds.
Wow.
So we went back and forth with the structural engineers of the building multiple times. We have multiple engineering company partners just to reevaluate everything that we do, make sure everything is safe. Unfortunately, at the last minute, there was a surprise cable track, and we had to shorten the wall by 2 tiles. So we were just coming in at barely at weight, and they were going to allow us to do it. But safety is always a big concern, so I wanted to bring that up. How we do make sure that the buildings can hold what we're putting up.
No, that's a huge factor, and I'm glad you called that out, because the other part of that is obviously coordinating when that's happening in the build, because the content has to be adjusted then. I mean, hopefully, right, you had a little bit of bleed on that content, using an old school printing term, but a little bit of bleed that allowed for that to still fit on that wall. So I know we're moving along here, and we brought up another small wall here that had, in this particular case, this is a set piece, that the slot machine handle. But when you were talking earlier about interactive, and it's funny because with our team, there isn't a lot of work that has to go into making that slot machine handle actually become fully interactive and drive the content on the screen.
Yeah, it was pretty, I don't want to say disappointing, but we would have loved to see the slot handle be active. But I mean, this small wall is a great example of how well we can integrate these walls into their set pieces. Though, if you can tell, I mean, The fabric is perfect along the edges, everything installed perfectly, and it went really well.
Yeah, very cool. All right, so let's keep moving along. And while I'm doing this, guys, just a reminder, thank you for joining us. This actual NMR Connect session will be available on demand as well. If you have any questions, please go ahead and click the Q&A poll on the top right. And you can go and put your questions in there, and our moderator will approve them, and then I'll see them, and I'll go ahead and ask them to Jason, and we'll both field them together. What we're doing right now is just reviewing some case studies on some recent projects we've done as we came back in person and trade shows started opening them back up again. And it's been an incredible experience for us, and we're happy to share it. Now, this project, Jay, this was actually just as the pandemic was hitting. Our teams were out in Vegas redoing the largest sports book in the world at Westgate. And I know that there's a lot to talk about this. And while this is a permanent installation project, it speaks to, I think, in a lot of different ways, the intricacy of building out a project the right way, having incredible engineers who are able to understand what needs to happen, right, and then giving a really detailed description back to our partners on each piece of equipment and why those pieces of equipment are necessary for success with a project this large. This is actually a video, and I'll let it play while you talk.
Yeah, I was super lucky to be a part of this project. I do have to call out Mr. Doug Whalen, the head of our permanent installation department. It was a big learning experience for me to work with him on this project. It was a massive undertaking. It was about 2.5 months of solid work. It was about a month of pre-build and then a month and a half on site. We were actually very fortunate because due to the pandemic, the casino was shut down. So we had the whole place to ourselves. We not only redid their whole entire video switching system, we also redid their whole entire RF distribution throughout the casino. So we made our own cable network. We did a lot. We redid their whole entire control room, and we actually completely reimagined how this kind of system would work by using SDVOE technology.
Well, all right. So let's break that down, right? Because we have a different, we don't know who's going to be watching, who's here today, and what knowledge is there. So tell me a little bit about what that is.
So the SDVOE technology is amazing. We're actually able to take a video image, and all of these are like, cable boxes, DirecTV, Dish. We take those images and then we encode them into SDVOE format over a network. So this was actually all the video was switched over the network. So the best way to describe it is you're eliminating a lot of copper cables. You're eliminating a lot of things. We had a 400 gigabit bandwidth of throughput. And since all the video is encoded, it's available anywhere. As long as a decoder is on the network, you're able to get that video anywhere you want it. And it also gave us the ability to do these wonderful multi-views and different looks that they wanted by re-encoding the encoded video.
And so I went and changed pictures on you just because then this is the master control suite that we put together there that controls the whole world, right, for the Westgate.
This was the coolest part of the whole project. When you're out in the casino and all you see is that big wall, you don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. But what we were able to do here was quite impressive. All of the operators actually had their own touch screens, and they were able to pick the sources they wanted, the layout they wanted, and then hit send and send it to the wall. So if you look at the top section of all those screens, it's actually just showing what's currently on the wall out in the casino so they can see what they're showing. On the bottom, they actually had the ability to pull up a bunch of different channels. Each person could say, hey, I want to look at ESPN. I want to look at the golf channel, and they can keep an eye on things for when they wanted to make their switches.
And that's, I guess why I think it's so important for us to look at a project like this, even though it's not a trade show, is because this technology, right, and the ability to, Jason, how many input sources were there? A couple hundred on this thing? It was a lot.
Yeah. There were a couple hundred, and like I said, they were all encoded and they were all modulated for the RF system as well. So they were split into two. It went everywhere. It was a massive undertaking.
It was funny because you were talking about designers earlier, right? And you were like, designers like to dream big, and you know, I between you and I, right? I always love when people dream big. Like, you know, when you're designing, when you're putting together, you know, the wildest, most ridiculous thought process on this incredible layout or this incredible booth design that kind of breaks the mold, right? That's kind of our sweet spot, right? Like that's where we like to hang out. I mean, yes, you know, we all like to have that show that we do that, you know, we go out to, and it's kind of an easy one in between the big ones, you know, where we're able to kind of just, you know, cruise through it because there's nothing overly complicated to it. However, these big projects that require creative engineering, you know, when they require a team of thinkers and innovators that are, you know, absolutely second to none. That's the same process and the same talent that's required to create these incredible experiences we're looking for to help our partners execute on the trade show floor. So let the designers dream big. You know, there's two things that's always going to shut down the biggest dream in the world. That's budget and feasibility, right? You can't escape either one of them, right? You know, budget is always dictated a lot by time, right? We know that how that saying goes. But feasibility, you know, what is actually possible with technology, that's pretty. I mean, the bounds of that have really stretched pretty far. Anything else, Jay, before I move on? Because I do want us to cover a few other things, and I don't want us to run out of time before we do.
I mean, there's so much on this project. We could do a whole entire hour on it. So, like I said, I definitely want to just another call out for Mr. Doug Whalen. He was the mastermind. And
how much is Doug paying you today? That's twice. Listen, that's awesome.
If you had to work with him on this project, you would be just as appreciative as I am.
You know what's so funny? When this project came down the pike, our CEO Mike Midori came to me. He's like, "Hey, do you want to be involved with this at all?" I said, "Doug's got his head wrapped around this thing." I said, "There's no other brain you want on this except for Doug Whalen." So I'm with you on that, buddy. But in light of us moving on and trying to share as much insights as we can, while I move to this next project that we have, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. I'm going to tee up something, Jason, that we didn't talk about because I think that this is very unique to letting people start to begin to think about really innovative ways of using LED and other types of technology. So let me just give me 1 second here while I get this queued up. I always love doing things on the fly. Let's see if I can drag this over to my other screen. Actually, I'll just do it in the screen.
Are you gonna try? What I'm going to do is I haven't seen before.
No, you've seen this one before, but it's like what I like to call an oldie but a goodie. And it's a project I actually worked on, and you're going to see me a little heavier and with a beard. But let me go ahead and pull this up first, and then I have to wait for YouTube to skip the ads. But I think this is a really good one to share. Hold on, let me share my screen. I'm going to share a Chrome tab. Okay. Here at NMR events. So I'm excited to shut the audio yet another installment in the NMR. You guys here? Okay, great. Now, what you guys are seeing here. Let me put that up full screen. One more adjustment for you guys. Good. Okay, so this interactive LED floor. This was something when LED floors were first starting to make a real break in there. You know, they do have interactivity in them, right? We didn't talk about that. Not all of them are created equally with this. Some have to use different technologies to become interactive. But what this was the ability to create a space at an event or in a trade show booth that was immersive in the sense that when you walked out onto the floor came to life, right? And so what you're seeing here, and Jay, I'll let you jump on this in a bit, but you know, what we are actually doing is we created in a 3D environment a gravity or a lack of gravity. So when a user stepped, the fire embers, right, that were generated under the user's foot would actually float up into the physical space that we created. So there was an LED floor right on the bottom, and then there was an LED wall behind it. There was two different types of LED there, and it was able to create this really cool thing. What I love about it is that it's almost like a Tron-like look, you know, the way they used a pixel of the LED on the edge of the space just to Well, it's two purposes. It looked cool, and it was also for safety, so somebody wouldn't, fall off of the thing while they were walking off of it. And then they had things like what we used to see in kiosks. But if you see the accenting and all of the things that go into it, we've done a lot of this, as years have gone on since this project. What is your favorite part of this type of project when it comes to interactive LED?
Well, I remember this project, and it was one of the coolest things I had seen, and we were one of the first to do it. But one of my favorite things about like interactive LED is it really helps. You're kind of playing with something. It's almost a game. When you've never experienced something and you've never seen something, you kind of go up to it. So there was a lot of people on that floor just dancing around, seeing how many embers they could make, and it was hard to keep people off of that floor. And the really cool thing that I like that we did there was accenting the pieces around the LED. So we were able to accent the podiums. We were, able to just bring everything to life, and also accenting the edge was a big deal for safety purposes. So people knew, hey, there's an edge here, and we can see it. But interactive LED has been getting better and better. I'm sure we'll see a lot more of it. And then that project was great. That's all I have on that one, Kyle.
Cool. So now we have our first question came in from Ian Scott a few minutes ago while we were talking about the Westgate project. Ian says, what's driving video on the Vegas sportsbook? I just finished a casino sportsbook for apps and our integrator using a video over IP solution through an Everett system. Interesting project. Thanks for sharing. So his question was, what was driving the video on the Vegas sportsbook?
It is a video over IP solution. The instead of HD-based, which is like a traditional one, SDVOE, we partnered with ZV, where ZV is the company that made the modulators. So they made the encoders and decoders. With SDVOE, it's able to be switched. HD-based is point to point. So that's the system we used. It's incredible to work with. I recommend anybody who's looking at doing anything like that to looking into ZV's encoders and decoders.
So those encoders and decoders, did they have a mainframe that allowed for presets or for image processing to create those looks?
So yes, we actually, that's how we actually had a system where all those control panels in those control rooms could talk to the ZV mainframe system, but it went through IP control. So we were able to make a nice interface to work with that system to trigger the boxes and to do the multi-views. It was all based on just a ton of math to get, and even the funner thing was you're limited by how many pips you could do. So how many layers you could do based on the bandwidth. So we'd actually take multiple encoders and re-encode the video into itself multiple times. So I didn't share a picture with you, Kyle, but we were testing it on site, and I had like 10,000 pips up on the wall, which was, it was insane. I was just doing it for fun, which, if you're a video guy, that's pretty nuts.
Yeah.
We just kept feeding the video through, the encoders into the decoders into the encoders over and over again.
That's incredible. All right. So, Ian, I hope that answered your question. What I'm going to do now, Jason, is I'm going to transition into touchless technology. Obviously, in a post-pandemic world, or while we're still coming in and out of the pandemic, there is always a need now for us to innovate on safety, right? And being able to give solutions that are incredibly helpful, for people to not have to worry about touching screens, right? So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to bring up a video that you were actually you put together that will show our audience exactly what touchless technology we were using in this instance. I know there's a lot of different iterations of this. Give me just a second for me to get the video up, and I'm just going to zoom in on it for now. Here we go. Share video and screen. Let's do the tab. Sorry, guys. I'm kind of shooting from the hip on this one a little bit. Okay. I think I should back it up just a few seconds for you, Jay. So why don't you go ahead and tell us about the process to finding this technology and then integrating it into events, because I know you have quite a few trade shows coming up right now with this technology part of it.
Yeah, so obviously, with the pandemic, we were looking at a ton of different solutions for touchless technology. Um, I ordered every single product on the internet to try and figure out the best way to integrate. The biggest problem with touchless tech is all the pre-existing tech that was out there. You had to build your content based on its parameters. So you couldn't take a pre-existing piece of content and make it touchless. With this technology, you can. So the great thing about Free Touch is we added on the monitor, but Free Touch is pretty much a program that generates a QR code. As soon as you scan it, your phone becomes pretty much a trackpad. So you can either have that QR code on your monitor, or you can do what we did, which was put it off to the side. We put it off to the side for many reasons, mainly regulatory reasons for big pharma shows. And also it doesn't take away from anybody's pre-existing content. So you don't have to you don't have to work the QR code around your content to make it work. So you're able to walk up, scan, and have instant control of that screen. It also gives you the ability to do things like a keyboard. So you're able to actually type into the screen without touching it. It gives you scroll bar features, and it makes it work with any program that's already out there. So if it's HTML based, if it's Intuiface, whatever it is, whatever kind of program you're running, you can use Free Touch with.
That's awesome. And I can only imagine. I mean, from an interactive standpoint, it just frees up developers to really still have that, that touched environment where you're in control, right? Where that's, I mean, when you think about interactive technology, I mean, that would be something that, a lot of trade show goers and attendees might have stayed away from, right? But with a technology like this, now they're on their device and they feel safe doing, right? There's no concern there about transmission and things like that.
Absolutely. And I wanted to point out, one of my favorite things about this technology is that most of the time with the rentals, we have it so that it's a touch screen and this is an option. So not everybody wants to scan something with their phone and use it. So it's an option. So, and I've seen people on the show floor get absolutely floored when they're able to scan it and not touch the screen. And I've seen other people who are just like, can I touch the screen? I'm like, yeah, you can do either or, which is a great thing about it. So it's
awesome.
not limiting it's not limiting in what you can do with other technologies where it's only touch and it can get frustrating or someone doesn't like it. It's 2-in-1.
Do you think that in the future, we're going to see more of this just become standardized, where you have both options moving forward? Now that it's kind of been, we've seen a lot of technology get standardized now because of need, right? And now it looks like it's going to have a longer life. What do you think? This is something that will also hang around?
Absolutely. So there's other benefits other than just cleanliness when it comes to using touchless technologies. If you're looking at like kiosks that are out and about, it's wear and tear. People touch buttons over and over again. The buttons get worn. So the lifespan of these products can actually last longer when people aren't touching them. So I see people trying to use this more and more. The dual option is good right now, but I see in the future that people are going to want touchless communication with things also, like I said, just for maintenance reasons, because it's not going to wear out.
Is there, could you see it in a world where that can also possibly get developed into lead capture in the same step? Do you think that that's something that could be developed if we wanted to?
That's something we're working on. Yeah. So
I figured as
we're
much.
working on lead capture and we're working on
Right.
white labeling as well. So obviously we would like it so when someone scans, they're able to have a customizable splash page show up, and that's something that it's in the works. It's just it's a slow progress right now.
Got it. And there's been so many different technologies that have come out through the pandemic. However, we did see a little bit of a tick down in innovation of new things that are happening right now, right? Like I feel like there's going to be a little bit of a gap on innovation because with trade shows and events, and in-person stuff starting to come back, there seems to be a gap on the amount of spend, obviously, that companies like ourselves were making on new technology. So it was kind of funny, Jason. I'm sure you saw this as well. Early in the pandemic, there was like this rush of all this new stuff that was already developed that came out,
Mm-hmm.
and then it stopped. What do you think? How long before we start to see the companies reinvesting and we start to see incredible new stuff starting to hit the floor?
I think we're going to start to see a lot of new stuff hit the floor. I think that along with this free touch app, I think there's going to be a lot more things that tie directly into people's phone. Just like in real life, you have your wallet on your phone now. You could start your car with your phone, and almost everybody has a phone. So I see a lot more integration into people's individual phones as the devices they use to interact with things. So maybe, even go to McDonald's, you scan a QR code instead of using a kiosk, and then you can order from your phone. There's going to be a lot of stuff like that happening, because it's going to take away the cost of businesses actually having to implement the infrastructure and just making it software.
Okay. Well, that makes me start thinking about a lot of other stuff, right? So, on the last NMR Connect, we talked a little bit about a single platform solution for conferences and trade shows, right? So big picture stuff, right? Traditionally, what happens at a big conference trade show is you have your registration happen on a website, right? And then you show up on site and they print your badge, right? You put your badge around your neck, and that's your entry point, right? And then they have maybe an app you can download, right? And that app has some information, a map of the floor, right? Saturation point of apps is mediocre, sometimes better than others. Like a show like CES has probably a higher uptick than a pharmaceutical show does on integration of an app, right? However, what we learned in the pandemic with a single platform solution is, there's a lot of incredible stuff that can happen. Well, enter cryptocurrency and NFTs, right? So now I know you probably didn't think I was going there, but this is a really big talking point. When you start thinking about non-fungible tokens and you think about them as an access point, right, and as an item of value that the association with that conference can issue, right, there is now a connection through the smart contracts that NFTs use, that when you start thinking about a one platform solution, my phone, because you said this, right, your phone, well, it's going to disappear because I'm using the promo key, but our smart devices now become, okay, our access point, right? We don't have to go and print the badge, okay? That's our point. Now, there are still options to go print your own badge, right? Like if you want to have something around your neck that says what your name is, great, However, the smart devices, an NFT connected to it, right? That past lives on forever. I was listening to Gary Vee talk about the beautiful part of creating, like if you had the option to the first US Open to have that ticket stub, right? Now, this has value because it's a one of a kind and there's not a lot around. But as NFTs and things like that start to become part of a one platform ecosystem for conferences, now you start thinking about, okay, well, what does that mean for the attendee and for the organizer, right? Think about it this way. If I'm an organizer, right, I want to know as much as I possibly can about my attendees, and I want to be able to stay in touch with them as often as possible. Because we have a single platform from registration through signage, through activations that controls all the content, controls the NFT that's on our phone, right? We're able to track the behaviors of our attendees. Now, not big brother kind, right? I mean, everyone can opt in and opt out of what they want to share and what they don't. I personally love sharing my information because it creates a unique experience for me, right? So if I go to a show like CES and I go and visit XYZ and, A, B, and C booths, right? What happens is my organizer is now with a single platform able to speak to me throughout the year on things I'm interested in because they learned that about me, right? But more importantly, they're able to create a community around me, right? So I know that I get up on my soapbox and I start going down this one platform, path. But when I think about new technology and trade show and innovation of what we learned in the pandemic carrying into what we're doing now, right? What percentage of the designs you see coming in, Jay, right now have some sort of hybrid element in them, like a stage with a webcast? Let's talk.
A lot.
There's a lot of it, right?
There's a lot of people want to integrate now. You can reach a larger audience by doing a hybrid event. Even if you have the same numbers that you've had in years past, you still have that hybrid effect where other people online are going to be able to attend the event and you can get your message across. So we see a lot of hybrid events coming across. Even in trade show, people want cameras on site and they want to be able to stream from their booth. If you have a product launch, you want to get that information out there, and that's the best way to do it.
So there's a lot to that unpack that you just said. If I have a trade show booth, and let's say I'm a manufacturer of a product, any manufacturer, right? And I have subject matter experts all over the world, right? Can't travel because of travel restrictions, or it's not a good time of year based on our build cycle, the cost, right? All of the different things are coming. Now, what we've learned in the pandemic can create, in my opinion, these incredible experiences for the in-person attendee as well as the remote attendee, right? So you mentioned reach, right? Being able to reach out to a larger audience by sharing the content and the experience of what happens in the booth, right? What the organizers, the designers, the builders, the planners, everybody that's involved with putting together a booth, they need to start to now think about, when I spend my money, right, what has the largest impact and the greatest ROI on that spend, right? And does a hybrid portion of my booth do that? For some products it may, for some products it might not, right? However, what we do know is connecting humans to humans. Shout out to my buddy Brian Kramer who tagged that phrase. But connecting human to humans, right? That moment is what we love about in-person events, right? And Jay, I know I'm talking a lot and you're just kind of listening to me, but you say a few things and you get me going on this stuff, so it's exciting.
Yeah.
But now when you think about what's the value of the human-to-human connection digitally as well as in the flesh, organically, right, face to face. And I think that what we're creating now is a better trade show world, right? I think that the reach, the accessibility, right, and the creative content to educate people on our products, on our services, on our innovations is going to explode over the next 5 years. And it gets me excited because, well, we're in that business, right? We're in the business of creating these unique things with technology. This is kind of like, I mean, we're at 1:52 p.m. and we're wrapping up. Jay, that's my big thought, right? Is I'm excited about interactivity. I'm excited about information and organizers being able to learn more about their attendees so that they can make better experiences. What if you could pick a few things that you're incredibly excited about when you see headed into technology? Put your futurist cap on and give me your best 30 seconds.
Well, I think we talked about this earlier, not online, but XR is one of the things I'm truly excited about. They use it in a lot of videos. We've done testing with XR. So to me, that's going to be able to transport people to wherever they want to be. As soon as they start tying in the XR stages with AR, it's going to be a whole new thing. And I hate using abbreviations, but when you're able to, an XR stage is pretty much a live green screen with LED. And there's been some amazing developments in the last couple of years. It's always been a one camera shoot. I think we're going to be able to do 2 cameras pretty soon. If anybody's seen, like I said, The Mandalorian, all shot on an XR stage. So all of that is just LED in the background, live rendered. And we're going to be able to do a lot of these events like that too. XR events are going to become more popular. You're going to be able to transport the person doing their speech to wherever they want to be, anywhere in the world, live rendered. So I think that that's a pretty big deal. And that's the main thing I've been excited about.
So while you were talking about that, I brought up this content that you shared with me of, this was kind of us workshopping. A lot of the stuff that we do with XR, we can't share publicly, but with this particular example, we were workshopping the technology with some of our partners. And I know you have a couple things here. What are we seeing right here, Jay?
So what's happening is I don't see the camera on the jig, but there's a camera on a jig and it has sensors on it to place it within a 3D environment. So that, the rendering server knows exactly where that camera is in space. When the camera is pointed at the LED, the image is distorted based on the camera's perspective. So, it may look like grass is stretched out or something looks a little bit weird when you're there, but when you're looking at it through the camera, it's a perfect image perspective based of what you want to see. Now, like what I was saying earlier, the thing that really excites me is traditionally in the last few years, these have all had to be one camera shoots. You can only do one angle. Recently, one of the LED processing companies introduced a new feature. So traditionally these things are running at 60 hertz. Will now be 120 hertz. We'll be able to do 240 hertz, which means you'll be able to splice in a different frame every other frame. So it might look like a strobe on the LED wall, but from the two cameras, each will be synced with the opposing frame so that they'll get two different images while they're shooting.
Right.
It's some pretty
That's
crazy
amazing.
tech they're coming out with. So
You
I'm
just
really
can't
excited
have any.
about
You
it.
can't have any epileptics like myself on set because we'll just drop.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to look insane to the actor, but from a director's perspective, if they're able to capture something on two cameras instead of one,
Yeah.
it's a big deal.
Well, it's an efficiency thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna pause just 1 second. We'll come right back to the augment. I'm sorry, the XR stuff. Jerry Wang, who's a LinkedIn buddy of mine. Hi, Jerry. So thankful for you joining us today. Has a question. What challenges or limitations have you found with the touchless technology, especially as an exhibitor, that we should be aware of? Latency, in interactivity, due to Wi-Fi connection. So, like any kind of interruption. Have you seen any of that limitation there, Jay?
I personally have not. It's a pretty low bandwidth product. Obviously, whenever anybody is using, especially the free touch technology that we like to use, it needs to be hardlined. If you have anything in your booth, in your show, or anything that's mission critical, it shouldn't be on Wi-Fi,
Right.
ever.
And the connection point is done over the internet, though, right? So the cellular device still has to have a solid connection to the internet.
Yes, and personally, I mean, we've been using it for, I don't know, 6 or 7 months now. I haven't heard any complaints or problems. I've never experienced a problem. Like I said, it's a pretty low bandwidth
Right.
connection, so it's not like you're pushing video or voice. It's just one X and Y coordinates of your finger you're sending across the web.
That's very cool. And just so even like on scrolling through things and stuff like that, no real challenges with latency.
No, I mean, obviously there's going to be, I don't know, 30, 40 milliseconds of latency, but I don't think it's nothing that would be concerning.
Right. Right. Gotcha. All right, cool. Thank you, Jerry. I hope that helps you. Next up is this is like an output, right? So this is a real-time render output from the XR system, showing them in this environment, right? And then I think I have a video of it as well to show you the camera moves on the jib as it comes down, right? So you can see a couple of quick motion action here. Now, the content that we're testing on isn't, obviously of the same quality as the Mandalorian, but there isn't a limitation in that, right? I mean, and the camera tracking information that goes through the system is absolutely incredible.
I wanted to point out something that's really cool about this system. So when that camera goes off screen, when it goes off the LED, it's literally, you'll see a slight delay and a jump, but it's literally live rendering that video into that blank space. So it realizes when it's gone off the edge of the LED display and start rendering that video live.
Right. So now okay. So when we go back to these pictures here, right, this is a pretty big footprint, Jay, right? But when we think about trade show booths, you don't need to have that big of a footprint. If, like you say, you want to have a single person on a stage who maybe is, the remote audience's virtual host, okay, and they're in a virtual environment, and so you put them on a floor and a wall, right, and you put them in a small space with a camera that they don't need to walk around, right? So you only need them to stand in a single space, but the entire environment around that LED wall. So I don't know, 5 foot, let's say 8 foot wide by 10 foot tall space, right? And maybe 4 foot deep or 5 foot deep. I could stand on that LED wall, and then the computer will render the entire world. That's where the extended part of extended reality comes into play. It's extending the entire universe you've created with your designer in 3D. Okay, now that camera can move into 3D space 180, 360 degrees and create those beautiful movements, but also create this sense of a large environment. So there's a lot of really cool things that can be done with that. More importantly, like Jay mentioned earlier, is integration of augmented reality in the extended reality, right? So really what you're doing is now you're able to create elements, okay? So a presenter could, while you're in the trade show booth, right, have an LED wall next to them that is an output for the audience to see in person as well, if they had to show the intricacies of a actual, a surgery or of how a medicine works, right? These elements could float in the air next to them, Matrix-like, right? I always love going. Oh no, Minority Report. I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
always love going back to the Minority Report. That thing holds up well. But look, you and I could geek out for days about this. It is 2 o'clock. Jason, thank you so much for sharing this time. Everybody that's here and watching this on demand, just in January, it's going to be a big post CES report. So we're going to be showing you all the great things that we saw at LED. We'll give you some, at CES. We're going to give you some insights on all the amazing projects that we did there and what was going on with them and what we innovated and how we did. So please come back and see us in January. Thank you so much again, Jay.
Thanks for having me on, Kyle.
It's great seeing you, man. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye.